of all, hello everyone and welcome to Drop the Gloves, a show where you ask your questions and you get straight answers from Wichita Thunder head coach Malcolm Cameron. In this week's episode, the coach discusses team updates with us. He talks about how the offense seems to be clicking on all cylinders now. And the coach explains why he's not much of an analytics guy. So let's get right to Drop the Gloves. So let's welcome back Coach Cameron this week. Coach, first of all, do you have team updates for us?
Everybody's healthy, ready to go on the road.
Big road trip this week, too.
Big road trip. We're leaving tonight at 9 p.m. Should get into Salt Lake at some point tomorrow and step off the bus and stretch the legs on the ice for about 45 minutes just to loosen up after a long night on the bus, and then play Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then have Sunday off. So right now we're healthy. We have 20 players that we're taking on the bus, and that's one extra forward, one extra D, which you have to have because of injuries and obviously call-ups and things of those nature. So everybody's healthy heading in the trip.
You're right at the halfway point for the season for you at 36 games, 15, 19, 1-1. What are your thoughts about how well the team is doing at this point?
Well, it's kind of been the tale of two seasons for us. We get off to a real good start, and then we lost some key ingredients, and we were able to sustain those losses for a little while, but then, obviously losing Roadwall, Krushelniski, Gags, Grenham, Rumble, those guys, and then, we lost different guys at different points, Loiseau, and then Dornbosch went up. When you lose a lot of guys like that, you have to patch things together, and those caliber of players don't grow on trees, so you try and see who's out there who can help fill a hole. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. Then we got some key free agents in Dornbosch and O'Brien, and we're kind of back to where we were, maybe the first 15 to 18 games of the season. We're playing that same style of hockey now where we're explosive offensively and stingy defensively. So if we can keep the core of this group together healthy for the second half, I think we're going to be in really good shape.
You guys scored 12 goals in the games against Allen this weekend. Chased Jamie Murray from 2 of those games. The team has really had a lot of fluctuation because of the moves that you've made, and I'm wondering, are you looking at this and going, wow, this team could really be scary good offensively pretty soon?
Well, I think all along we've had that potential. It was just getting the right pieces into place with the right, personalities in the locker room. It's all going to mesh, right? And, we had some guys here that weren't good fits for the team. So we moved players out, and we brought in different types of players, and a guy like Jacob Bolton and a guy like Brandon Carlson who just loved to defend, who just loved defense. And that's what we needed at the time. So, and then you got other guys that are really embracing their role on this hockey team and just sticking to it. So I'm really pleased. Even, towards the tail end of that losing streak we were losing 1-goal games, which is just, those are frustrating because I think it was 8 1-goal games we lost. If you get points in half of those, you're sitting in a totally different position. But I think we've learned from that, and we've learned to close out games, which we saw this weekend.
I wanted to ask from Saturday night's game, McCoy Urkamps gets in a fight and is taken off the ice, and then they draw James Melindi into a fight. Now you got 2 of your defensemen, of your 6 defensemen out for 5 minutes. Are you looking for your defensemen at that point to be a little more disciplined or less passionate about getting in fights because of that kind of situation?
Well, for sure. That's called the game within the game. That's a strategy the other team will use. They were missing some forwards and had an abundance of D, and it's a lot easier for a defenseman to move up and play forward than it is for a forward to go back and play D. It's a complete, difference. It'd be like a center in football trying to be the quarterback. It's a totally different mindset. So, yeah, that's a strategy that I'm sure Allen used to get us shorthanded for 5 minutes, and our guys, and we talked about this, sometimes you have to show some restraint and pick your spots. I'm not saying that you can't have that altercation, but maybe you do it when Urkamps gets back out of the penalty box. So, but, James is a warrior, and he's a heart and soul guy and one of our leaders, so it's hard to tell guys they can't do stuff.
Ken Patterson's looked brilliant for you in the 2 games that he's been with the team. With Scott Grenham coming back soon, tough decision for you, I would think.
I'm keeping all our goalies. Yeah, Drew Owsley's been a warrior for us, and this, Kent's success this weekend is not a knock on Drew Owsley by any stretch of the imagination. He just needed a break. 15, 16 games in a row. A lot of those when we're going through a tough stretch and weren't defending very well. So there's no indictment on him whatsoever. And with the situation that we're in terms of roster spots available, we have the flexibility to keep 3 guys, and that's what we're going to do.
You mentioned the long road trip that you're heading out on here. What do you expect to see out of your team during these 3 days?
Well, we've been good on the road this year. We won some big games, obviously down in Allen. We won in Rapid City. We won in South Carolina. We've won in Atlanta. We can win on the road. Our mindset is much of the same. We want to get as many points as we can to climb back in this race. We have a lot of games in hand on teams, but those games in hand are only good if you put points in the bank. So, our goal is always, like 5 out of 6 points this week.
Well, let's head to our fan questions this week. We first of all begin with Barry from Ashland. He says, why don't fans throw hats on the ice when a guy scores 3 goals in a game? Is that just an ECHL thing?
Why don't fans?
Why don't they?
I've always seen fans. They did the other night in Allen. So as far as I can tell, fans always throw hats on the ice.
I guess
it's a hat trick.
I guess Barry.
I'm not sure we've had a hat trick.
James from Wichita would like to know, looking around at the different levels of hockey, is there a level that you think you fit in ideally?
I've coached college hockey. I've coached junior hockey. Obviously, long time pro hockey at the minor league level. And even at a prep school the last couple of years. I enjoy the teaching part, so I think any level, that I just mentioned, or even the American Hockey League, which is really developmental and teaching, any of those levels, I think I'd fit into. I've enjoyed this level, and I really enjoyed the major junior level, which is 16 to 20-year-olds, because you're not only shaping them as hockey players, but you're mentoring them as productive people in life.
August from Clearwater would like to know, how do you decide the situation and the amount of time left in a game before you pull your goalie?
Well, it depends. If you're 2 goals down, I'll pull them, sometimes at the 2.5 minute mark, because you got to get 2 goals. If you're just looking at one, it's all based on momentum. Do you have full possession of the puck in the offensive zone? Is it at a face-off? But typically, sometimes around 1.5, 1:40. If you wait too long, you may never get him out. And if you get good possession with under 2 minutes in the offensive zone, I'll pull him.
I'm curious, based around that, what did you think about Allen pulling their goalie during that power play?
Oh, I've done that before. If you're down 3 or 4 goals and, it gives you a 6-on-4, the one thing you can't do is substitute your goalie in the middle of the play. But I've done that before. I've actually done it to make it a 6-on-3.
Oh, excellent. Stan from El Dorado would like to know, do you tell players when to more actively forecheck, or do they pretty much decide that on their own?
No, we have a forechecking system that we run and we stick to. Depending on the amount of bodies that you have and how many games you've played in the week. So if you're 3-3 and you're playing against a fresh team, you maybe go with a little bit different passive forecheck to save your legs, for the third period. But we have a strategy that I decide that. That's part of my job.
Eric from Burlington would like to know, he wonders why hockey is not more popular when it seems like it is the easiest in terms of rules to understand of the 4 major sports. I'm
not sure it's the easiest to understand, but hockey's becoming very popular here in the United States. I think with the moves to the Sun Belt places and hockey in Nashville now. Minor hockey in Nashville is big. I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but California's got good hockey. Dallas, Texas. Excuse me, Dallas, Texas. South Florida is hockey's become very popular. So in a lot of these states, even in the Carolinas now with Raleigh and the Carolina Hurricanes there, so you're seeing more hockey players playing from non-traditional states. So, and obviously it's global. I mean, we got players from Slovenia, Russia, Kazakhstan, just about every country in Europe playing in the NHL now. So I think it's grown by leaps and bounds.
Is that part, in your opinion, based upon teams being there, or is that ownership groups, or how is it that players are getting more involved in those games?
Definitely the teams being there has helped, and then the grassroots program that those NHL teams get involved in. I would think back to prior to the Dallas Stars moving to Dallas, there was probably only 2 or 3 hockey rinks, if that, in Dallas. Now there's tons of hockey in Dallas. I don't know how many rinks, but same with California. Prior to Wayne Gretzky going there's probably only 2 or 3 hockey rinks, but now it's all over the place. And the Ducks and the Kings have done a great job at branding their product in that area. And I was there 2 or 3 years ago for a WHL Western Hockey League Combine, and we had like 80 players from Arizona to California looking to get drafted into the Western Hockey League.
I just want to say, from being from Minnesota, we don't like Dallas very much. In hockey-wise, that is. Shelly from Wichita says, I watched a game recently where the goalie went down and somehow the player got the puck between the goalie's pads, even though he had his pads right against each other. How was there room to even do that?
Well, his pads couldn't have been too tight. If there's a hole between the pads, that puck will find its way in.
Our next question comes from Charles from Goddard. He says, I find it interesting that minor league hockey is so different than minor league baseball. In a baseball system, the minor league team would only get players from their affiliate club. Do you wish hockey was more like that?
Well, I do, in a way. The way the rules work in the NHL is the National Hockey League teams are only allowed 50 NHL contracts, and they can only carry 23 in the NHL roster. So, and typically, their American League team will only carry 23. So there's 46 right there, and you might have 2 or 3 guys in the East Coast Hockey League. So it'd be very difficult to stock a team at our level in NHL contracts. Now, they could be AHL contracts, which Stock Grantham and Crucial, Niski, and Rumble were. But I just don't think the resources there. The television contract that Major League Baseball has is ridiculous. That can fund all those extra contracts. Whereas in the NHL, obviously the TV contract isn't as strong, and there isn't as much revenue to be able to have more players under contract for development down here.
Now, does that mean that like salary cap expands out to all 50 players kind of thing? Is that how they do it?
Yeah. Whoever's on an NHL, whoever the active players are on the 23-man roster has to be at that salary cap. The minor league guys that are down in the American League, the East Coast, they don't count towards that salary cap. Like McCoy, Camps, Ryan Rupert are NHL guys, Vince Dunn, those guys don't count towards the salary cap.
Our next question comes from Charlotte. She says, in lots of sports, great players make terrible coaches. Do you think that is true in hockey as well?
I mean, I don't know. I think there's been a lot of guys that were good hockey players that have become good coaches. I just think it's all about work ethic and putting the time in. When you're playing, it's so different. You worry about one person. Like when I played, all I did was worry about my day, my mental preparation, and my game plan for the night. When you're a coach, you got to strategize against the other team. You got to put pieces in place on your team, and you're thinking about 20 people, and you're thinking 20 steps ahead, 20 steps behind. So it's a lot of different. Some guys just can't think that way because they only ever really worried about themselves. So it's a totally different job than it was playing.
They talk a lot of times about how the great players, it's tough to teach what they could do.
Yeah, well, that is true. But I mean, there's a lot of good guys. Darryl Sutter was a very good National Hockey League player. I wouldn't say he was a star by any stretch, but he was a good National Hockey League player, and obviously he's a heck of a coach. Joel Quenneville was a long-time NHL defenseman. Wasn't a superstar, but he was a real reliable guy. Obviously, hell of a coach in Chicago. So there's lots of those guys that were really good hockey players. People say that Wayne Gretzky maybe was a failure as a coach in Phoenix. I just don't think he had the right personnel there at that time. They were going through bankruptcy and different things like that. I don't think he got much of a chance to show how good a coach he could have been.
Next up, we have Harry from Wichita. He says, if a player gets a misconduct penalty, are there fines or other things that can come from that?
Yeah, there is. Like if it's a gross misconduct or a match penalty for intent to injure. Usually, the way our league works is teams prepay fines at the beginning of the year to the league, and money is taken out of that fine fund if a player receives a game misconduct or a match penalty or gross misconduct.
So it's more the team that's fined than the
player? The team that's fined, yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Pat would like to know, how do you get good at face-offs?
Study film and practice. It's the only way. You got to practice against guys. We do a lot at the end of our practices. We'll gather all the centermen up at center ice and get them to work on face-offs, lefty against lefty, lefty against righty, different spots in the ice. And it comes with practice and then watching tendencies. A lot of guys, I studied film of what a guy's tendency was that I was going to have to match up against that night.
So do you have all your forwards kind of practice that then?
No, just the guys that take the draws.
Next up comes up Andre. He says, how do you feel about the influx of European hockey players has affected the overall play in hockey?
I think it's been great. For years people thought the European players were just soft and skilled, but obviously they're not. Alex Ovechkin is as meat as a rattlesnake out there. He can shoot the puck by you or tackle you and tear your head off out there. You look at the Finnish hockey players now, they're more like typical North Americans. They come with speed and skill, and they're gritty as any player, whether it's north of the border or south of the border. And the skill level, obviously the Russian and Swedish players, you're seeing Norwegians in the NHL now. I mean, you're seeing guys from all over the place. So I think it's been a good influence on our game.
Our next question comes from Ethan from Fowler. He says, how come the Washington Capitals can always be so good in the regular season but can't seem to put teams away in the playoffs and win it all?
Well, sometimes it's circumstance. What is their matchup in the playoffs? Maybe they're just not getting a good matchup of a team that they can beat with the personnel that they have. I think it's a shame that people always lay that at the feet of Ovechkin. You get into a playoffs, it's a lot different in the regular season when you're playing the Capitals on a Tuesday, the Predators on a Thursday, the Montreal Canadiens on a Saturday. In your mindset, you're preparing for three different teams. But when you get to a playoff series, you're looking at 4 to 7 games against the same team. It's really easy to zone in. And when you do that, and you know your assignment is to check Alex Ovechkin, and it's do or die, whether you do or not, the attention to detail is much greater in the playoffs. So it's harder for a guy like him to be able to score at that same pace in the playoffs. So I think it has to fall on the feet of some of the other players to pick up the slack for guys that are, obviously targets for checking. And I don't think they've done a great job at that.
Our next question comes from Vern. He says, I know that Cal Ripken's Ironman streak in baseball is amazing, but I remember when Glenn Hall played in goal for 502 straight games, many of those without a mask. All due respect to Ripken, but that is a much more impressive streak, isn't it?
I got to agree with that. I mean, no disrespect to Cal Ripken, but I mean, there's a lot of times you're just standing around on the baseball field. And if you're a goaltender, you play 502 games in a row. We're talking back in the 50s when they weren't on Lear jets, they were traveling by train, and you're not wearing a mask. He'd get hit in the face and he'd stay in the game and play the next day. So that is incredibly impressive.
15,000 shots or something.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Our last question comes from the non-math guy who says, I feel like sabermetrics and analytics are ruining sports. Do you think that this is true in hockey as well?
Well, there's a lot of teams that are really into analytics. Now, I think analytics are an aid. I don't think you live and die by that because people still play the game. Analytics don't measure personality. They don't measure determination. They don't measure commitment and lifestyle and things like that. They do show certain things, time on the ice and scoring chances and whatever you want to break it down to. But I still think in the old-fashioned version of using your eyes and your ears to evaluate people. And I do use analytics a little bit, but I'm still a big believer in that people are the things you win with.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us this week, Coach.
Anytime.
We want to thank Coach Cameron for joining us on Drop the Gloves this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Wichita Thunder coach, please send them to us at malcolmcameron@minorleaguesportsupport.com. That's malcolmcameron@minorleaguesportsupport.com. Please have your questions to us by Monday evening so we can give the coach a little time to review them before we record the show. I'm Rob Paneer, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next time.